Uh, I was just wondering that uh, often when I try to seek or find out what is the actual truth, or let's say how a thing actually works, it often becomes a activity of the mind in which I see myself spiraling into the problem, and not being able to concretely decide that if this is really how that thing works. And this leads me to nowhere, and I continue to have the self doubt that is it have I
So in order to pursue something, you have to have a foundation in it. Does that make sense?
uh, no, can you please explain it a bit more?
What don't you understand about that?
uh, I need to have a foundation, but like uh, uh, are you saying that I should be aware of more truthful things, or like uh,
No,
have a
I'm asking you to respond to the statement that I just made.
I still have the doubt that I have. And
What doubt?
The question that I asked.
I'm not talking about the question you asked.
Okay.
I'm asking you to respond to the response. I don't know what people don't listen. People have a hard time listening. I don't understand. You have 2 ears, right? I spoke plain English. This is the third time I'm asking you now, and I'm gonna hang up very soon. I asked you to respond to the statement that I made.
Yes, we need to have a foundation.
Okay. So that wasn't very difficult, right?
Yeah.
You need to jump ahead 14,000 steps and go through hula hoops, and I asked you a simple question. Okay. So if you don't have a foundation in something, or a necessary or requisite foundation in something, whatever that something is, if you try to pursue that something without the necessary foundation, then all you will be using is a foundationless tool. Is that correct? And don't agree just to agree.
No, it is correct.
Okay. So think about that. Raise your hand only if you have a question.
Yeah, hi, Kapil. I've seen now that like all of my actions are like it's driven by anxiety. Even the chase for pleasure is driven by anxiety of not getting it. But one common theme is like, and it's led me astray, is that whenever there's a high stress or a situation, or there's a problem, whether it be a relationship or something, my mind will throw me something like I'll do this. And I guess that's the prescriptions, but it'll throw me it, and then there'll just be anxiety, lots of anxiety about not ticking it off. And with a lot of these
So where did that come from?
I guess through things that people have said to me.
That's correct. That's a very good answer, and it's very accurate. That's because you live in the world, and you're however many years old, and for all of these years, you've heard experts. And once again, I'm not talking about mechanical and technical things here. Anxiety is not a mechanical or technical thing. And so you've lived in a world in which this is not only the norm, but it's the only thing. So because you're a sponge, not you, anybody is a sponge, they receive from the outside world. And so the world in which you live in, that is what you have come to know. So because that is the only exposure that you have had again and again and again for so many years, then that is what is going to happen inside of you. So the only way that that can change is if the exposure that you have to something that is not that becomes greater than the exposure that you have to something that is that. So a person who, for instance, is exposed more to truth than he is to the world and the experts and the nonsense and the friends' opinions and the X, Y's, and Z's and the ABCs and the 5 ways to become happy and the 6 ways to become mindful and influencer podcast nonsense garbage, the more that a person is exposed to the way things really are, then that increasingly becomes his internal norm, in the same way that what you are experiencing now has become your internal norm.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
There is an increasing sense within me that I'm not the doer, and that comes at odds with my inherent desperation to be great at everything that I wish to do. So it's a bit of a paradox that I've learned to settle with, but I'm wondering where is it that I'm not understanding?
Because it's on the intellectual and spiritual level for you. It isn't a living experience.
Hi, Kapil. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I've been following your work for more than a year now, and it really resonates. I have a question in regard to the gap between intellectually getting something and then the understanding of it. And I feel quite stuck between the two in many realms in my life. So is that something you could speak to help me understand a bit more? I can give you more context if you prefer.
Are you understanding the reason why it doesn't happen, or are you trying to understand that you don't understand what that even means?
I was going to answer with the former, but I think it's the latter. Like, I kind of have an understanding when I actually get something. Like, every human being deeply understands and it resonates. Like, touching, say, something hot or feel hot, I have an understanding of that and I wouldn't do it. But intellectually, say, for example, I know touching something hot, but I actually do it.
Well,
but there are other areas
of the
life.
The touching of the hot is not intellectual, because you know that from visceral experience. That isn't theory to you. But things that are not in your things that are not physical and mechanical and technical. And if you read the truth about something, you may intellectually know it to be, or it may even resonate with you. But because it has not reached into your bloodstream, it has not reached your viscera, then it is only in the intellectual domain. You only know it to be true on an intellectual level. Therefore, it really has no relevance. I'm not going to say it's the same as not knowing it at all, because at least knowing it at an intellectual level then opens a door, which could then lead to a visceral. It doesn't mean that it will, but it could. If you don't even know it on an intellectual level, then it's probably never going to happen on a visceral level. But if you only know it on an intellectual level, then that is basically what intellectuals do. They just collect information, and then they talk about it at cocktail parties to make themselves sound smart. But something is only real once it reaches the bloodstream. Until then, if you're thirsty and you're interested in water, and someone tells you about water and tells you the story of water, it's not going to quench your thirst.
Yes, I understand that.
Hi. The other day, I felt what I guess I would describe as crippling shame, and like a tremendous guilt. And I went to the beach, and I started sort of digging a hole in the sand, like an invalid almost. I kind of saw. My interpretation of what I saw was just all of the ways in which my life is sort of being ruined by, I guess, what feels like just a giant hole in my heart, I guess. And I guess I'm not totally sure what my question is. I guess I want to know if that crippling shame, if it sort of felt like a living hell. And I guess I just wanted to know if that feeling was some version of the truth.
I think what oftentimes happens, I mean, I think every human being lives in their own version of hell. I think what often happens is that if a person feels some sense of desperation or intense suffering or shame or whatever it may be on an ongoing basis. And really they come to discover that all of the 5-step plans and the influencer nonsense really hasn't helped them. And so then they become serious. And this is not any kind of pattern that I can state happens in most cases. I would say it almost never happens. Humans are not serious creatures. They're very unserious, and they remain unserious their whole lives. And even though a person may go through bouts of shame and suffering, they usually so-called recover from that and continue on with their unserious ways. That's just humans. Not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just how they are. But if someone, and it's different for everybody, but for a given individual, depending upon where they are on their journey of life, they go through intense shame, intense suffering, and pain, and emotional turmoil, and it gets to the point oftentimes where it just becomes difficult to bear, and then sometimes they become serious, and they become serious in the sense that I really need to stop living my life according to fantasies and look towards reality, not because reality is some wonderful glee which make me kick my heels in the air, but because living according to fantasy and according to the way things are not, and according to what society and the experts have always told me, that I can't do that anymore. I have to, not because it's the wrong thing to do or the right thing to do or proper or improper, but just because suffering in this way is simply either I don't want to do it anymore or I just can't do it anymore. And then something can happen within a human being in which they can become serious, and they say, okay, well, what's the truth? I want to, if it hurts, it hurts. It doesn't hurt, I'm already hurting anyways. So I have nothing to lose. What's the truth? And whether that does happen to you or doesn't happen to you, I cannot predict. But sometimes these things can be a doorway to something that is perhaps the only substantial thing and the only journey towards permanence in their entire life.
In one of your interviews, you said that from time to time you do lose your track, so to speak, but the recovery time is much faster. And I wanted to ask you, what did you mean by that, and how it is?
I have no clue. I don't remember saying that. Maybe I did. I have no clue. I don't really remember what I say a lot of times.
Hi, Kapil. Thank you for letting me in. I just want to ask a question about a experience that I had because a few days ago, basically, I realized that I was like acting, and my behavior was like too conditioned, and I felt like I kind of lose that sensitivity, or I became more senseless from that behavior, and was every behavior basically was like just a pattern that I have learned, that I have repeated, and continuously I was failing at my job. Uh, I don't know, at establishing relationships, and that actually lead me to frustration.
So what's your question?
My question is, why one is pulled away from this heart? Why one becomes senseless from their own behaviors?
I don't understand the question.
Hi, Kapil. My question is like, how to get ahead of this feeling that nobody understands you. Like in our day-to-day routine worldly affairs, we need to interact with so many people, but yeah, there is always inner conflict. Uh, you want to speak or like deal at a higher level, at a spiritual level, but so worldly, so sometimes low life. There's no hate about others, but there's two things. One is a deep feeling that nobody understands you. Second, how to like higher up the things, and you can't always get out of the this worldly. You have a family. You have to support it. You need financial.
I actually did a podcast today, interestingly enough, which actually addresses that problem. A direct truth podcast it's on the Twitter page.
I have been following your work from last 2 years, and lately I have realized that I have not been serious. I had been very insincere in my pursuit for the art that I am pursuing in my life. Now, time to time, I feel a lot of anxiety hits me when this question comes to my heart. What do I want from my life? And I feel like here also my degree of seriousness and examination is not that serious that I would be uh, able to answer that. So I am asking this only because I have been following your work lately. Kindly, if you can give any suggestion regarding that, sir.
I mean, I think that's a very worthwhile pursuit to ask that question. But I can't really give you any so-called tips as to how to find the answer to it.
My question is, for my whole life, I feel inferior when I'm talking to other people or in relationships, and I catch myself wanting to be or to feel superior. I don't know if this means that I want to be free from feeling inferior, or I just want to feel good. And my question is there such a thing?
One is simply a reaction to the other.
I see that I'm running in circles. I see that I'm wasting time, and someday that's going to end. But why does it not change me? Like I'm I continue to be like this. I have kind of accepted this. Like that knowledge should Perhaps I would hope that it should transform me, but I continue.
That's back to what a previous speaker or previous questioner was asking about, was intellectual versus visceral. You are on the intellectual. Knowledge doesn't really change people. Only things that are realized, only the realizations can change people. Knowledge is just intellectual jargon.
What makes realizations turn into knowledge? Once someone had some realizations or anything, if he was exploring a topic or a situation, then it becomes knowledge.
You are here to make a statement, not ask a question, which is fine, but to keep it to yourself. I don't want to hear it.
The finding a worthwhile question. So I found, looking back at my life, that the actions that I do every day makes me feel that I have sincerity in looking for truth without trying. And I really want to find a worthwhile question that stands on its own and that this another voice in my head can't immediately answer, that I wanted to ask. But I find it so difficult to find such a question. And I feel like there's something here. And I feel like maybe like this maybe is the path. So I wanted to ask your opinion on that. Thank you.
It is very difficult to ask a genuine question because it's just like it's very difficult to do something that one has never really done. No human asks genuine questions because, and it's not really their fault, because they're enabled, they're encouraged to ask top of the head, superfluous, cosmetic, superficial things that don't go anywhere. And the expert who gives them a response gives a nonsense, cosmetic, superficial response, which matches the superficiality of the question that was asked. So that's where a human being has lived for his entire life. So he's never had a gun to his head. He's never had a knife to his throat saying, I'm not going to answer your stupid question if it's not sincere, if it isn't serious, if it isn't genuine, if it isn't real, if it's just off the top of your head and you feel like asking it because you feel like you have the right to receive an answer, which you don't. So that's not the world in which you live. As a result, everyone then adapts to the environment in which they live. Life adapts. And so that's how the human being has adapted. But when they come into my domain, I'm not here to make them unadapt. I'm not here to make them change. That's not my job. I'm not really interested. I'm just not interested in what the world is interested in. I'm not interested in what the experts are interested in. To me, genuine, sincere, reality, heartfelt, devotion, truth, anything below that bar, I'm not interested in. So it is understandable why it is difficult, because one has to go against everything they've ever gone against. So naturally, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, it feels impossible. Thank you.
Hey, Kapil. Thank you for continuing to drop into the spaces every now and then, because I've been looking forward to asking this question. So I was exposed to your work a few years ago, and it really cut through a lot of the lies that I was telling myself. And what I've decided was the most natural thing for me to do was try to return to the kind of the essence of who I was when I was younger, before I was, conditioned and exposed to a lot of the lies of the world. And that process has been kind of unfolding naturally on its own, which has been of benefit to me. However, I recently had the insight that perhaps doing this is also just a chase, and I'm just chasing after something, some sort of result, even though it seems to me, at least, as if it's a pure pursuit.
Yeah, so that's so why are you doing it?
I feel as though there's no other choice. Like everything else just seems like I'm rushing towards lies and imbibing lies, and the other way seems as though there's some degree of I don't know, like peace or equanimity that seems to arise the
So I guess
closer I go.
at the end of the day, I guess it could be a chase, but even if it is, number one, if you're gaining something from it, like you said, you're gaining some benefit from it, and you're not gaining benefit from the other way, then that in itself is a win. Regardless of where it goes, how deep it goes, and what more you get, doesn't matter. The fact that you get something from it, and especially if that something has any kind of lasting value, then I think that's a sign for yourself that it may be, at the end of the day, human beings are looking for benefits for themselves. And obviously, the more lasting that something can be, then that obviously is a sign that the direction in which they're going is the proper direction for them. So what else can you really go by? Because and if it's a chase which gives you some kind of lasting results, then I don't think that's a chase. A chase is something in which you're kind of just running here and there and doing cosmetic things, whereas what you have described is something that seems more authentic and something that's in the direction. And another thing is it's in the direction of being away from the world. It goes in the so these are all like little signs, right, for oneself, not so that you can be happy that you're being correct or anything like that, but just for your own self. It's all for yourself. And so things that move away from the experts, things that move away from the world, things that move um, away from public dogma and away from media and away from what the books say and what the speaker says, things that tend to move away from those things and more move internally, tend to be things that are more genuine. They tend to be things that are at least in the direction of naturalness.
And am I kind of off the mark when I think that the journey is kind of, or the one of the pillars or the milestones is to find that person that I was when I was like a small child, like trying to return to that essence of myself?
I think there can be an element of chase there. I think it's more along the direction of attaining realizations without viewing realizations as some like some reward that you can put a plaque on the wall with, which is what everybody does. But in terms of I don't think it's about if one has to return home. I think the home is the ultimate home, the home of what he was even before he was a kid. I think it's returning to purity. It's returning to pure naturalness. It's returning to the things that exist when there is no worldly poisoning of them. And to further along the lines of that last response that I gave, to return to a world, to live a life in which there's no worldly poisoning. I think it's about returning to one's ultimate home, and one's ultimate home, to return to one's ultimate home while living their life, to have a long life, to live one's entire long life pursuing one's ultimate home while living their life. I think that there's a truth in that.
Thank you for the space. and I'm grateful to be here. So I was exposed to your work about a year back, and it has become very clear to me how destroyed I have become by the world. So right since my childhood, I have kind of felt as a person who is an outcast. So in my very early schooling days, I had literally almost no friends, perhaps one friend, and that too was more an acquaintance than a friend. And this was always pointed out to me by my school teachers, my friends, everybody else. And as a reaction to this, I always sought out competitiveness to kind of make up for this deficiency of not being able to fit in. So in my high school days, I entered the competitive exams in my country, in India. And I spent 4 years preparing for the exams, and I took great pride in, being better than my competition. And that was the chase that I took on to kind of make up for this deficiency. But it all fell flat when the final exam that I gave, I kind of messed up the exam, and it set me down a road of deep despair. And I've seen this thread as a constant current in my life, which is I gain an intense drive to achieve something at the expense of everything else. That thing seems to, capture my attention. And then after I get it, it just seems very hollow in the end. So this happened even a year back when I try to get, I'm a research student. So
what's your question?
Yeah. So my question is, I find myself wanting, in whatever I pursue, I find myself wanting to be better than everybody else in that thing. And this thing is really, I catch on to too many desires in this way. And I'm unable to figure out which one is genuinely authentic to me and which one is not. And that's kind of been my struggle.
I can't tell you which of the desire will be most authentic to you or not.
Thank you. Thank you, Kapil, for organizing this space. And the only one question is, what is the single most devastating problem of a human's life?
So instead of buying the podcast, you want me to just recite the podcast for you for free on Twitter Spaces?
No, not at all, sir. Not at all.
If you want, then buy the podcast. You don't have to.
Hello, Kapil. So every time I'm in a state of peace, I'm inches away from being, from introducing chaos into my mind. Or every time I feel confident, my mind is like inches away from making me feel insecure. And even, in a state of non-attachment, I'm now in a state of, I'm now attached to that state of non-attachment. This realization that I'm always going to be stuck in these pendulums no matter what I do just really scares me. I wanted to know if there's something beyond this, or is this all there is?
Well, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier about achieving permanence. Everything that is true is a journey towards permanence, not temporary, fleeting things. And what's in the world, and what the experts and the meditation instructors and all the people, the spirituality and the self-help, those are all about trying to feel something for a temporary time. And that then you just jump from one boat to another. And that's all that is. It's a waste of time because you'll always be jumping. And so, even though it's a waste of time, I would not tell someone not to do it because, in all honesty, even if they get something for 5 minutes, is better than not having it at all. So it may provide them some benefit. So I don't recommend against it. To me, permanence means everything, and so you're going to ask me the question. I'm going to give the answer to you from my point of view. Doesn't mean that that's correct for you, but you have asked the question of basically fleeting things, and that's what spirituality, self-help, and the experts. That's all they know is all fleeting things. And so if one recognizes the fleetingness of something and the temporariness of something, then it may give birth to something inside of them that is a desire for permanence, in which they're not really interested in things that are temporary, but things that actually maybe they then go on a journey towards seeking that which actually remains and lasts. Not that they will, not that they won't. It's up to them, but that can give rise to that.
Hello, Dr. Gupta. Thank you so much for your works. I wanted to ask what causes an overwhelming, genuine desire for the mastery of something or to arrive at the truth of something?
I don't know what causes it. I cannot tell you what causes a desire to happen within someone, why someone has a deep desire for something, but the next person does not. I don't know where that comes from.
My experiences in the past 5 years have shown me that there's just as much struggle at the top as there is at the bottom. So I feel quite disillusioned. It feels almost impossible that you can live a life of peace. I was under the belief that if I was to make it to the top, there will be less struggle, but there's just as much struggle at the top as there is at the bottom. So I feel as if I know it is possible to escape struggle, but it feels out of reach sometimes, if that makes sense.
Well, it's natural for it to feel that way because the tools that you've been given are the tools of seeking how-tos. And if you're trying to achieve peace and freedom or any kind of lasting thing by way of how-tos, that doesn't work. So naturally, it's going to feel like it's difficult to achieve.
Been given how-tos and prescriptions, and I don't know how else to say this, but the people I work with tell me what to do and how to do it every single day. And I don't know, I wouldn't say I don't know, but it's very difficult to insulate myself from these prescriptions if I'm constantly surrounded by these people every day. I do seek a space of solace, which I only do have at my residence, but how do I keep my ideas insulated from I know you don't recommend how-tos, but I don't know how else to say what I'm saying, but
I don't think you understand how-tos. I don't think you understand. You would never ask that question if you understood that. I mean, you would not ask. That's what I mean by intellectual versus visceral. And as for getting away from people who give how-tos, well, in order to get away from that, then you'd have to get away from all of humanity because that's all the world ever knows. So it isn't about running away from people and living in a cave. It is your insulation is not against other people. Your insulation is against your brainwashing against conditioned ideas.
Hi, Kapil. I deeply appreciate the space and the opportunity to talk to you. As the previous questioner was also saying that it is so tough to live in this world and to see things differently, and sometimes I get lost again into the same thing. Even though I see it, sometimes I'm lost. I'm into it. And later, after some time, I see it. Oh, this is not the case. Even though, like, internally it speaks and I understand, and I feel the time is so short. I'm always lost in this world. There is.
And I 100% respect and value and understand what you are saying, because your story is the life of every human. And that's why I always say that it is about seeing through the world, because if one does not see through the world, and I don't mean in the next 5 minutes, I mean whenever, however long that journey takes, if one does not see through the world, if does not see through people, if one does not see who people really are, if one does not see what the world really is, if one does not see beyond the conditioning and the brainwashing of what the stories and the lies they've been told, then they are a victim. If one does not see beyond the world, if one does not see the world for what it truly is, to look behind the stage, to peek back behind the curtain, then one becomes the world. And so to me, the only thing is the exposure to truth. Because how did one become that way? One became that way because of constant, and not because they chose that, that's just where they ended up when they were born into this world. They became that way through a constant exposure to the world. They didn't come into the world saying, I want the world, I want the world, I want the world. They didn't do that. They were just exposed to the world. Whether they wanted it, didn't want it, liked it, didn't like. Everyone's story is the same. They were exposed to the world. And through that constant, and by the way, they didn't practice, right? They didn't do 5 steps to become worldly. They didn't do 10 steps to learn about the world. They didn't do 20 steps to become more societal. No one did that. There was no prescriptions. Isn't that interesting? There was no prescriptions. They just became lost in the world. They just became worldly. How? Well, if there was no prescriptions and they didn't do any practice, none, 0, and they didn't try, and they didn't put effort, and they didn't go to mastermind meetings, and they didn't hire a coach to become worldly, and yet they still became worldly. Why? How'd that happen? How'd that happen if they didn't go to school to learn it? How'd that happen if they didn't take a class? How'd that happen? It happened because of exposure. So in the same way that it happened because of exposure to the world, then the exposure to truth is the exposure to truth. Now, that doesn't mean that you should do it. It doesn't mean that you should like truth more than you like the world. That's up to you. It's whatever you like, you like. I don't have any recommendations. But I'm telling you how the whole thing worked.